in an orderly manner. We have a pretty tight agenda tonight, and so we're going to try our best to stick to it, the timeline schedule that we've set as much as possible. So we very much would appreciate your cooperation in doing that. We will have an opportunity for the public to weigh in on conversations and to raise questions and issues. So everyone will get their chance to speak. The only thing that we ask, like I said, is that everybody sticks to those time constraints so that everybody gets a shot at speaking tonight. With that said, we'll get started, and we'll start off by calling a roll call to see who's here tonight. So commissioners, when I call your name, please say present. So representing 4D01, Commissioner Joy Pinckney. Representing 4D02, Commissioner Kate Judson.
Present.
Representing 4D03, Commissioner Carson Lucarelli.
Present.
Representing 4D04, Commissioner C.C. Corniotis. Commissioner Corniotis, can you hear me? I see you're signed in. We'll come back to her. Representing 4D05, Commissioner Stephen Morensic.
Present.
Representing 4D06, Commissioner Aman George.
Present.
Representing 4D07, Commissioner Clark Weigel.
Present.
And Commissioner Corniotis, are you there yet? In any case, we have a quorum, so we'll get started, and whenever she's back, she can check in so we can mark it for the record. Next item up is we have an approval of the agenda. Commissioner and Secretary Aman George circulated this agenda a week ago. Commissioner George, anything that we should know?
I believe that there are a few changes to what we circulated a week ago. But correct me if I'm wrong. So one is we had in the initial agenda, we had suggested there might be a resolution concerning Catlet Alley. I think we're not going to tackle that tonight. And then there were two potential settlement agreements that we may vote on this today. Are both of those still on the docket for today for Mama Chepa and Mariachi?
Yes, for Mama Chepa.
Yeah, this is Lucarelli. Yes, I'll be providing an update on Mariachi, but we won't necessarily be voting per se.
Okay, so then I would propose that we update. I would move that we adopt the draft agenda with the removal of the Catlet Alley resolution and instead the addition of the Mama Chepa resolution.
All those commissioners, or I need a second from somebody for this.
Second it.
Joy
Thank you.
Pinckney, second.
Commissioners, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any nays? Changes are passed. Are there any other additions or changes to the agenda for tonight's meeting? Without objection, the agenda is approved. Next up, we have the minutes from the February meeting. Commissioner George, anything that we should know about the minutes?
There are no changes to the draft that was previously circulated. So I would move that we adopt the meeting minutes from the February 2023 meeting.
Are there any proposed changes or edits from any of the commissioners? Are there?
I second. Joy Pinckney.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any objections? So approved. Next up, we have the Treasurer's report. Treasurer Corniotis, are you there? We seem to have lost Commissioner and Treasurer Corniotis, but we will come back to her. Next up, we have comments from city officials. So for those of you in the general public, as you may know, if you've attended these meetings before, we have representatives from different offices who come to these meetings, and they're here to share information and then also answer questions. So first up, we have a representative from the mayor's office. Is our MUCA representative here tonight?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. And I just wanted to introduce myself to you all formally. I'm the new Mokers from Ward 4, and I will drop my information into the chat just in a moment. But I wanted to also extend a few invitations and give some updates from the mayor's office. And as most of the commissioners may know, I was making rounds on the phone and making emails about tomorrow, which the mayor is planning to host a March Madness event with regard to housing, real estate, business development. And so she's inviting the public out to attend, as well as any of the commissioners. It'll be held at the National Building Museum, 401 F Street Northwest. I will drop the link for the reservation when I drop my information for how to contact me as well. And then additionally, I just want to re-lift up, I had the opportunity to join you all, or some of you all, this past weekend to discuss public safety, which the mayor takes very seriously. And so as part of a citywide initiative, she has a private security camera system incentive program, and I will include the links for that as well. But it's a way to curb the criminal and violent activities that we've seen by allowing residents and neighbors to purchase Ring cameras and then get a rebate or reimbursed back for those. And lastly, I just wanted to say that upcoming March 22nd, I believe, next week, the mayor will be dropping her budget. And so as part of that, she will have all of her directors out in the communities speaking about the budget and taking the concerns of the ANCs as well as just the community at large. And so in the future, at some point at one of these ANC meetings, we will have a discussion about the budget. And so I welcome you all to participate fully in that, and I will offer more information in the future as well.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, no problem. Thank you all.
Are there questions from any of the commissioners? Commissioner Lucarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Derek, Mr. Johnson, it's great to see you. Thank you for calling me earlier. It's great to put a face to your name, albeit, through these pixels. I have one question, and it's brief. There was a burglary on Kennedy Street a couple weeks ago, and what stopped the burglars from entering the business were burglar bars. Is there any incentive from the mayor's office or any rumblings that you've heard of, that would also incentivize those types of just really minor improvements to a storefront window? I mean, it doesn't seem very expensive. I mean, I know people in my building that took advantage of the Ring camera program. I think it's great. I just don't know if there's talk of it expanding or if that's even possible, because I think a lot of people would benefit from that, although I'm not going to speak for any one business owner. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the question. And what I'll do is take that back to the mayor as one of the hot topics. Every week I sit down and write a report about things that I'm hearing in the community and things that are uplifted in these meetings. And so that's actually key. If the Ring cameras are supplemented by burglar bars, then that's just an added layer. And I'm sure there may in the future be some conversation about how we can create an incentive program. But just as you said that, it reminded me to mention that the mayor also has an initiative around cars, because as we know, there's been a lot of Kias and Civics being stolen. And so being here in the Ward 4, we have access to go to the 4th District Police Station on Georgia Avenue. And if you bring your registration and stating that you own the vehicle in question, and they will give you a bar for your steering wheel. And so that is just one additional way we want to secure our residents and neighbors here. So I will uplift the issue of burglar bars, but I also did want to mention that. So I thank you all. And if there are any other questions, I welcome you all to ask.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Morensik.
Hello, yes. I'm just wondering if you happen to have any updates from the mayor's walk, the community walk that she did with us in Petworth last week, specifically regarding DPW and the cleanup of the Petworth area along Georgia Avenue. I know a lot of graffiti tag all over the city, but it's really important to get that taken care of. Do you have any updates on that?
I do, and I will say I can be more clarifying in the future. The one thing that I do know is while we were doing the walk, there were members of the Mokers team enlisted to input service requests to 311 right on the spot. And then at the very end of the walk, the mayor did a roll call and asked DPW what their next steps are. And so I do believe I may have just received an email earlier today or late last night about any updates that DPW did. And so I know those service requests did go in on the spot, and I will be able to bring up, or I can also email any updates so that we can have them on the record for our next meeting as well.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Other questions from any commissioners?
Actually, to follow up quickly on that, has the mayor's after action report been published from the walk?
That is good. I actually worked on the after action report that evening. And so let me find out for sure if the after action report has been published and where, if so. Let me make a note of that right now.
Other questions from any commissioners?
I just want to make a quick comment. I thought that the walk was very productive. I think if Commissioner Weigel or Commissioner Forensic want to add on to that. But I think what we, as a commission and throughout the city, all of the commissioners hear from the constituents that it's a lot of, photo ops, et cetera, with not much action. And so how can we as a commission and you, Derek, moving forward, be more, I guess, actionable on getting some results?
No, I definitely hear that. And while I won't use the excuse that this is my second week, I do plan to be very invested here with you all. I'm a member of the community. I'm not too far up the street from Kennedy Street and Petworth area. I'm very familiar with a lot of the issues that are currently happening, and I do take it seriously, if not for myself, for the community. And so I will want to meet and talk with all of you all personally and then as groups so that we can figure out best ways to get more access to what government is supposed to be providing for this area. Because as I mentioned in a text message to one of the ANCs, that you all are living here in the communities and you know best about what actually needs to happen to solve the issues. And so listening to your concerns is of utmost priority to me. And then following up with solutions.
I do have just one more comment. I want to thank you for contacting me. I know it was 3 a.m. The other night about the fire, unfortunately, that happened around the corner from my house. I just want, not everyone knows how hard some of us work receiving phone calls at 3 a.m., but I appreciate you reaching out to me even at that unsightly hour. I do appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Judson.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I've heard a lot of really great things about the Georgia Avenue walk with Mayor Bowser. And I'm just curious if we want to invite her to join us on a walk on Kennedy Street, what is the best way to extend that invitation, knowing she has a lot of competing priorities and demands? I just would love to work with you to bring her to Kennedy Street to walk block by block and see some of the challenges we're facing as well as opportunities.
I'm a proponent of that idea. I think that the more we get eyes on it, people tend to understand what the issue is. And like I said, when we were doing the Petworth walk, there were people there on the spot to, start the conversations, initiate 311s. And so I do believe that's something that we can get scheduled. If there's a way you as the commissioners might be able to send me a letter and I can get it to her scheduler. I think that might be the easiest way. I have contacts with her scheduler. I'm talking to her in a different thread now. And so I do think that it's useful and we can get it scheduled for as soon as possible. But I know like the mayor, as any mayor around the country, has competing interest groups trying to get their attention. So as soon as we can get something in writing, I know that I can send it right over and I can keep you abreast of what that looks like, what a potential timetable could be.
That sounds great. And thank you also for just being so responsive to everything so far. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you.
Commissioner Weigel.
Mute myself before I talk. Okay. Hello, Mr. Johnson. Good to see you again. I had a really good meeting with the folks from Cure the Streets on this past Sunday. Saturday, I don't know, it was the weekend. But it was super cool because they had partnered with the folks at Shellfish Market on the corner of 5th and Kennedy to provide free food for anybody who was 11 to 30 who showed up that day. It was I thought I was meeting one person and I walked into like a really cool community event that they had thrown together on a short notice. It was amazing to see. And that kind of a small like organizational energy brought in so many different people from the streets from all walks of life, right? And I got to meet the violence interrupter. I got to meet some of the staff who work under Cure the Streets, like Keon, like the people actually out on the street. It was super cool. It was really cool. But I think that like part of the, like, I know we had a public safety meeting on Saturday, but part of the resolution that we're talking about drafting for April could include just requesting more of a visible presence. So public safety walks, as well as like community events like the DPR, the big like concert bus or the skate mobile, and let people like close a block and ride roller skates on one of the blocks, right? But just more of a presence in general, I think would be a really positive thing because there's a lot of the community leaders in the area have got a lot of interest and momentum, and we're all trying to like get to know each other right now.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that the more we have activity, events, engagement, where people get to meet their neighbors and actually know, hey, we're both human. We both have needs. We both are here together. Let's make the best of it. And I think that idea is great. And I love to work with you directly and any other commissioners of community members to start getting that ball rolling, because I do know there been requests in the office to find different alleys that need to be revitalized and start getting murals up and starting just engaging children at the youngest of ages so that they understand the value of community and the value of living in a nice, safe place together. And so I love the idea. So let's collaborate. Let's co-conspire.
Commissioner Pinckney.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Johnson. I had the pleasure of speaking to you earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How do I say this? There is a problem throughout the city called crime. Okay. Now we can dress things up and make things all feel good and everything. But we have to start addressing that issue in a direct and resolute way. Throwing police activity at it is not going to get it alone. Now, our Ward 4 council person grew up on Kennedy Street.
Girl,
Hello?
Yes, we hear you now.
Okay. And these people have grown up in this area, but there's just no physical investment in the businesses on this street. You know, the street because I live on Kennedy Street. The street is a major thoroughfare in Ward 4. Okay, we have major buses, it's a snow route. It's the route from one section of the city to the other, even into crossing into Maryland. But it has not been addressed when it comes to beautification, when it comes to investment in the businesses that exist on this street. Kennedy Street used to be a place where people were proud to be here. And it's abandoned. When you come through here, the look and feel is abandonment compared to the places where the mayor showed up to start her walk and the places where they would prefer to put a second library rather than putting a library in the middle of Ward 4, and especially this area where it's needed. Now, it's okay to have feel-good things, going to restaurants, getting everybody together, but we have to have something that's going to address the ones that are out here perpetrating these crimes against our constituents and us. I'm my own constituent. So what I would like to know is if we can have some meaningful dialogue, not just a walkthrough with the mayor, but we need a meaningful dialogue about the funding that could be set aside for a beautification opportunity for our neighborhood as comparable to other parts of the city, and for accountability for people who come in to build condominiums in other places, and hold them accountable to also providing parking spaces, etc. Because every time we look in our blocks and our streets, you all are taking more and more parking spaces that are available away, and you're adding full buildings of people who are coming in. And the fact is, every household now has at least 1 to 2 cars. That's a fact. People don't exist in Washington, D.C. without them, but she's made it an anti-car friendly environment. And here on Kennedy Street, because it's less and less opportunities to park your car without worrying about it being towed, or nowadays hijacked, carjacked, or jacked up. I don't know which one. So when I'm looking to see the mayor, I'm not interested in just a walkthrough and a drive-by. I'm interested in what can we do to be proud of our neighborhood, number one. What can we do to seriously engage the young adults that are here? There's no opportunity for them to go someplace to look for a job, to study to get a job, to wish they had a job, to talk about GEDs or anything else. These are the conversations we have to have, and not in a drive-by way. So I don't know how you're gonna put that on your agenda, but I'm gonna put a period right there.
Well,
Thank
let me
you.
say thank you for your comments. I really appreciate it because I hear you and I understand the frustration. And what I'll say is that I want to convey that the mayor is the mayor. However, I'm here to be a representative voice for her. And so I want to do all that I can to help ensure Kennedy Street comes back to the luster that it once had, the proud viability of businesses and community. And to that, I will say, I loved Commissioner Waggle's idea about engaging the community. And what I was just thinking as you were speaking is that I've been over the last 2 weeks going to all of my sister agencies, and I've been hearing about different ways and opportunities. And I say to myself, does anyone know about this? and how can we make it so that they do? And so to that end, I would like to have an open discussion at some point. I know that we're running on an agenda tonight, but I would like to think about an open air market where we shut down part of Kennedy Street and we start with a public service element, do a clean walk and do cleanup. And then we'll have tabled areas where we have opportunities for different agencies to come out and clearly express some of the things that they do. For instance, with regard to the young people in the neighborhood, the employment youth program is up and running. The applications have gone out, and however, there are other things like maybe you all don't know, the National Guard has a program for youth who have dropped out of school seeking to get their GED. There's programs where there's the youth cadet program with the MPD. And so I think there are resources and initiatives that the mayor has started, and they're nascent, but through conversation and outreach, we can make it known to every resident in Ward 4 about opportunities that exist. And this is the thing, I went to the National Guard, the Armory, and they were begging us to have, they have capacity for 150 beds for their program. They only are at 35. And I know there are more than 115 other people who are seeking GEDs, who have a troubled history, who may need to actually be enlisted in this type of program, but it's going to take the community support, but we have to find ways to engage them. So I think along the lines of having meaningful dialogue is opening it up and not just expecting that the mayor herself is the person that is going to answer everything. We have to then take and empower our agencies to do the things that their mission says to do. And so I would love to have a great conversation with you all about that. And I know we're getting late in the evening, so I don't want to take up too much more time on this, but I do definitely hear you, and I will be in contact about ideas about how we can work together and make Kennedy Street and the whole corridor the place that you grew up in, the place that Councilwoman Louis George grew up in. I think that it's not impossible. It's that we need to reimagine together. And in doing that, we can open up limitless possibilities.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Commissioner Lucarelli, in the interest of time, are you able to follow up with your question privately to Mr. Johnson later, or is it a question that's important to raise now at this meeting?
Well, I think it's prudent to raise it now, and
Okay.
and I'll say that Mr. Johnson, I don't need you to respond. I just want to echo some of the things I heard tonight. You know, I agree with Commissioner Pinckney's statements in part, particularly about that we need an approach that's more than just police, and we need to do something about the actual perpetrators. You know, for what it's worth, I mean, 1 or 2 days after that incident on Kennedy and 7th, you know, the same individuals are back out there, and it's not for me to go into the history of what is going on out there. I think it's well documented and everyone understands what that is. But you know, we have to find a way to, because I'm not supportive of anti-loitering laws, and I think we're privileged to not have those here in the district, because if we did, they would be unjustly targeted against, you know, people of color and disproportionately applied. But you know, we have to do something about the folks that are abusing that privilege and going beyond just occupying public spaces and doing things that, you know, are, you know, that they wouldn't do in front of their grandmother's house or their aunt's house. And so that to me is disrespectful. And so we need to find a way to curtail it, because I don't want to see neighbors of mine, particularly those of color, locked up indiscriminately because we're trying to champion some loitering law. I don't believe in that, but we need to do something different. And I really like Commissioner Weigel's suggestion earlier about reoccupying public spaces. And, you know, that's something that I was thinking about in private to myself, that, you know, we need to find a way to do that. And I think using public art is great. I used to organize public art in Richmond. It was actually part of my graduate thesis. And so I'm all for that. And I look forward to working with you. Thank you. I yield back.
Are there any questions for Mr. Johnson from the general public? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Johnson, for joining us tonight, and we're happy to have you as our new MOCR. Next up, we have Ms. Barbara Rogers from Councilwoman Louis George's office. Ms. Rogers, the next 10 minutes are yours.
Okay, excuse my voice. I've been under the weather for a couple of days, but I am excited to be here and to provide an update. And I would just like to thank Derek Johnson for his update and our office. We look forward to working with you. As you all know, Kennedy Street is very special to Council Member Louis George as she grew up in that neighborhood. So she is definitely excited to do all she can do for that, for Kennedy Street. So I just have a few updates. The Green New Deal for lead-free DC. Last week, Councilmember Louis George reintroduced the Green New Deal for lead-free DC. This legislation would accelerate the replacement of lead pipes in DC to remove all lead pipes by 2030. Among many other things, this bill would require DC Water to create an inventory of all lead pipes in DC to strongly increase financial support for replacing the lead pipes, make lead pipes replacement mandatory, include protection for tenants, and to also create job training programs for good green jobs that will be needed to make this transition. The council member also submitted her Ward 4 budget request letter earlier this month. There will be an opportunity to weigh in and to help shape the budget. I'm happy to put the link in the chat where you can go and read the full letter. And we mentioned about a library at 5th and Kennedy Street Northwest. A major request in the council member's budget letter is for funding to bring a new library and job center to 5th and Kennedy Street Northwest. She wants to thank the ANC 4D's resolution on this really important request. We want Kennedy Street to be an opportunity zone for people, the same way it is an opportunity for development. So we are waiting the mayor's budget release on March 22nd to see if this request is included. And at this point, the budget will go to the council to make changes. The council budget oversight hearing with DC Public Library is on Thursday, April 13th, starting at noon. Our team is available to help anyone that wants to sign up and testify. SNAP benefits, and I think I mentioned this before, that if you have any residents that need assistance with getting the maximum SNAP benefits, since the SNAP emergency allotment through the pandemic that program expired and was not renewed by Congress. You can contact our constituent service representatives for assistance with that. And as we talk about opportunity, we're having a Ward 4 Jobs Not Gun job fair. And that is going to be on Saturday, April 22nd at Coolidge High School. And we're partnering with the DC Gun Violence Prevention Coalition. And we are hoping to have an array of employers there. The time is from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. If you know of an employer that you would like to see there, please reach out to me, as we're now gathering and reaching out to employers to support this event. And there will be, we just received the updated flyer because this was actually had to be rescheduled. It was scheduled for April 1st, but now the new date is April 22nd. And I may have mentioned this before as well, that we are finally done with Listen as We Climb. We heard from over 200 Ward 4 residents in 7 separate events across the city. So we want to thank all of those who attended the meeting, who actually expressed any community concerns. And then we want to share a traffic safety win. We want to thank the ANC commissioners for their partnership to secure an important traffic safety improvement. And that is the traffic light that has been approved for Georgia Avenue and Farragut Northwest that will be installed towards the end of the year. So we look forward to working with you and DDOT on the implementation of the upgrade. And finally, if you are not on our newsletter distribution, please sign up at www.ward4news.com to receive our newsletter. And our website that has additional resources is www.janiceward4.com. And that's all I have. Thank you. And again, excuse my voice.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. We appreciate your being here tonight. Are there questions from any of the commissioners? It looks like a question from Commissioner Judson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Barbara, for being here tonight. I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear about that you raised about the library, the potential of a library and job center coming to 5th and Kennedy. In terms of how we can sort of mobilize and continue to support, what are the best ways for us as an ANC and to like work with our constituents? Is it to come to the April 13th hearing and then to also encourage folks to submit testimony? Or are there other ways?
Yes, I think that will probably be the most, the best way. I think if the mayor's office can hear from as many people to say, this is what this community wants, this is what we need. I think the more people she hears from, that's a better our chance of getting it.
Great. And then one related question is, in terms of timeline, I know this is to go into the budget, but like, do you have any sense of if it does become a part of the next budget, when would you even break ground on a library? Like, is that like a 5-year thing, 10-year, 2-year? Do you have any sense of how that works?
I don't want to give misinformation. I don't know, but I am happy to find out for you and send you an email with a possible timeline if it is in fact added to the budget.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that would be super helpful. I just know from talking to neighbors who are constituents, they're wondering like, if this even happens, what are we looking at time-wise? So appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Cornelius.
Just a couple of quick questions. One is, Ms. Rogers, you stated that during the council members, those talks that she held, what were they called again? The climb?
Yeah, Listen as We Climb.
Listen as We Climb. So you stated that there were a total of 200 residents that attended those. Would you consider that a, sort of a acceptable participation when the ward is, I believe, this is a census from 2022 of about 84,000 residents. So is there a way, I guess, in the next iteration of these talks, if we could get, as a commission, even we could work to maybe increase participation on those? Because
Sure. Yeah, we would definitely welcome, we put it out there in hopes that the commissioners would, of course, send that information out and to get more participation. We always welcome more participation. Any ideas you all have that again, we put it out there. We did flyers, we put them everywhere. So any suggestions you have on increasing participation, we definitely welcome.
And then my next question is related to, I guess, the current dynamic of the council members' relationship with MPD on the whole, because I recall that when she was running, there was sort of misinformation, I would say, that, she wasn't in support of, the number of police officers, et cetera. And there is a graphic that's, in my opinion, pretty concerning at the number of police officers that are actually, active duty at the moment in comparison to what it was even, 4 to 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry, what's your question?
So my question is, I think on the whole, is the council of the mindset that there are enough police officers currently? Because I would argue that there isn't, and there should be sort of maybe more of a recruitment process in place that the council can maybe draft, but this there just has to be a balance, and I don't think there is right now.
Okay, yeah, I am not sure if her position is that there are currently enough officers, but I definitely, I can email you what her position is on that. I mean, we all want to be, our communities to be safe, and I'm sure that she wants to do whatever that has to be done for that to happen.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Lucarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Rogers, it's good to see you again.
Yes, you too.
Virtually. I just wanted to make a point, and it's almost a situation where don't hate the player, hate the game. So I'm not upset at anyone, but I just want to raise something, and it sort of goes beyond what we're able to do as a volunteer body of elected officials. But it's frustrating that while I'm relieved to hear that there's a traffic signal coming on Georgia and Farragut, I believe is what you mentioned, it's frustrating that it takes so darn long. We're talking about people's lives here, and I get multiple alerts every week about someone that either a pedestrian that's hit or a major crash on Georgia, and so we're almost dying for a plan in a sense. And it's I'm saying that so I wish there was a way to fast track some of these things that we know. It's not like there has to be some sort of engineering study or a traffic study or an environmental impact assessment. Like we know, like, yeah, I wish there were ways that to more faster implement some of these changes that we already know will be effective, rather than a whole quarter-length study. So anyways, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you being the messenger for that.
No problem. And our office, we totally agree. I'll share this. We were just out at 13th and Hamilton Street where we got a four-way stop sign. And the residents have tried to get this for 2 years. And they were told that there is no data. And so our office went and knocked on, I don't know how many doors, getting stories of accidents that had happened. There's a playground right there. And so they were really concerned about children, possibly being injured. And it actually took our office to submit that information from each resident in order to get that four-way stop sign. So I do agree that things should not take as long. And sometimes you have to do extra work, but we're up for the challenge to do the extra work, to make our community safer.
Well, and, I just want to, please also let the Honorable Councilwoman know that, she, in my eyes, she really has been a champion for, pedestrians and those who aren't using motorized vehicles to get around. And so I really appreciate the work that she's done. you know, the work speaks for itself. And so I just hope that, you know, with her, you know, with her voice that, you know, we can continue to do great things. And I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Commissioner Pinckney.
Yes, good evening.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for coming out. And I'll talk to you offline about Chanel. Okay. You know, I'm talking about your pen.
I'm sorry.
I'm talking about your pen on your lapel, your Chanel
Okay.
pen.
Okay.
Okay, we'll talk later. But for the business at hand, I thank you definitely for coming.
Sure.
I'm concerned about everything that has been put before you and everything that you had to say. But my focus right now is on the library. In the absence of the library, or while we're waiting, I would like to ask how we can get funding or use of the library mobiles that the district owns and have a schedule for them to be in our neighborhood until this happens. That's
Okay.
really I would like for you to find out. And
Okay.
I'm Commissioner Pinckney.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I would, you know, love to have your personal number. And
Sure.
Commissioner Kate and I are working about the libraries. And I don't believe when there are options, I want to look at what we have already and
Sure.
see if we can them.
Okay.
Not as not as a replacement for our request, but as a stopgap so that this service can be utilized by all of 4D.
Okay.
And anybody needs it, but I know we need it here. And then I really want to understand her preference of the library, because there is another option that they're considering to put the library up there where the Walter Reed place
Mhm.
used to be.
Mhm.
However, there's a brand new library 1 block up
Mhm.
over there to that community.
Right.
Okay. Not only do we not have a library, we don't have a big enough or large enough CVS. There's no CVS now left in our neighborhood on Georgia Avenue. Then a Rite Aid had moved in, but that's gone. Okay. The CVS that's down there at the end of Kennedy Street, it's not large enough to add all of us to that. So we're systematically eliminating life-sustaining options for those
Sure.
of us who are young, middle-aged, and older. Also, I'd like for you to speak to what her agenda is for the senior population in our ward.
Okay. I have all that written down, Commissioner Pinckney, and I will get back with you. I did put my phone number in the chat, but I can provide it. It is 202-288-9820. And again, my name is Barbara Rogers for any of those that don't have access to the chat.
Yeah, that's me. Okay, Barbara, Ms. Walters, say your number again, please.
202
Uh-huh,
288
uh-huh.
9820.
Okay. All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Are there any quick questions from the general public for Ms. Rogers? Hearing none, we'll move along. Thank you, Ms. Rogers, for joining us tonight. We appreciate your presence here.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a representative from Cure the Streets. I think it's Mr. Byron Johnson. Mr. Johnson, are you here, or is there another representative from Cure the Streets? No, maybe we'll try coming back to him. After that, we have a representative from Department of Transportation here tonight. Do we have a representative from Department of Transportation who's going to update us on the Georgia Avenue Bus Priority Project?
Yes, that's me.
Thank you for joining us, sir. The next 10 minutes are yours.
Okay, great, thanks. I do have a presentation, but it looks like my sharing is disabled. Is that okay to give a presentation or?
Sure. I think Commissioner Judson, are you able to share?
Yeah, let me try to fix that. Give me 1 second.
Okay. So maybe while we're doing that, I'll just start talking through some of the background, and then once I'm able to share, then I'll get that going. My name is Zach Gambetti Mendez. I'm with the District Department of Transportation. I work on the bus priority team, and I'm leading the Georgia Avenue Northwest Bus Priority Project. So just some background and context for the bus priority project. Over time, we were seeing bus speeds start to slow down. We as the district in WMATA, to the point where it was actually costing WMATA up to $30 million per year to maintain the same level of service with those delays. And now that automobile traffic, right, then the pandemic happened, but now we're starting to see automobile traffic kind of pick back up to near pre-pandemic levels, and so those bus speeds are really starting to drop again. And slower bus speeds really impact, of course, riders' access to jobs, schools, medical needs, and other destinations. Let me get this shared really quick. Okay. And so, of course, that impacts, how much time you have to plan into your travel, how much it costs you, because you could potentially need to grab an Uber so you're not late for work and pay, 3 times as much than you would have taking the bus. And it just adds stress to your day. And so because of those issues, the Bus Priority Program was founded. And the goal of this program just basically is to work on 51 projects for the 51st state across all 8 wards of the district, with the main goal of improving bus speed and reliability. But as part of that, we're also looking at making sure that we're looking at the entire rider experience. So are the pedestrian facilities adequate to get to the bus stop? Is it safe to get to the bus stop? Are people getting injured or killed on the roadways? And addressing those issues as well. So there's a large kind of Vision Zero safety component that goes along with these bus priority projects, and we're not just looking at the bus. But how we do this is we have a toolbox of over 20 treatments. There's 4 examples on the screen here, but there's 20 treatments that can be utilized in different contexts, different situations. So not every bus priority corridor is going to be the same. For example, Kennedy Street is one of our bus priority corridors that will be worked on in the future. That is probably going to look a lot different than Georgia Avenue, for example, because they're different contexts. And so this toolbox has a bunch of different tools that we can utilize in different contexts. And so, I can share a link to the toolkit if folks are interested in kind of perusing what other tools there are. But this is kind of our main kind of source or, toolbox that we use for our bus priority projects. And then who benefits from bus transit priority investments, bus priority? It's not just the folks on this section of Georgia Avenue, which we'll get into in a second here. It's really all those who are taking the 70 and 79 and making connections along their way. And so now Georgia Avenue specifically, why are we focusing on Georgia Avenue? Well, first, I guess let me kind of tell you what the project is. We are currently looking at Kansas Avenue to Missouri Avenue. So it's about a 1.3 mile stretch. There's a lot going on Georgia Avenue in terms of transit investments and bus priority investments. Down by Howard University, Florida to Barry, there's already bus lanes. Maybe you all are familiar with those. Those were put in several years ago. From Barry to Kansas, I'm working on a project right now that is about a year ahead of this project that we're talking about now, where we're looking at bus priority investments, bus lanes through that corridor. We're now looking at kind of the next segment, Kansas to Missouri, and then in the future, we'll look at Missouri to Eastern. So we're really kind of trying to pull all of Georgia together, do them in smaller segments at this point in time to try to get them in quicker so you can see improvements on your, within your particular sections more quickly, but really trying to get that whole network of the 70 and 79 to have bus priority infrastructure. Because Georgia Avenue, the 7079 are our busiest routes in, I mean, not only the district, but just the entire WMATA Metro bus system. The 70 is the busiest. The 79 is around the 5th busiest or so. It kind of bounces around a little bit. But together, they make up the Georgia Avenue 7th Street line, and that is the busiest line as well. So, I mean, we just have a massive amount of people taking the buses on these corridors, and they face really slow travel speeds, as I discussed when I kicked this off. And we have a lot of people kind of getting on and off the bus in this area, Missouri, Kennedy, Upshur, Kansas, and we know that a lot of those intersections are also very dangerous, and we have seen injuries and fatalities, unfortunately, at some of those intersections. And so we're thinking about, you know, people getting on and off the bus, but also how are they getting to those bus stops, and are they safe? So, you know, we are just kicking this project off here. There will be various inputs that end up going into this project as we move forward. Of course, the project to the south will maybe help inform a little bit of that, but we're also taking public input, which is starting, you know, here tonight. You know, we're doing bus priority analysis, safety analysis. We have our plans that are guiding a lot of this work, the bus priority plan and the Move DC plan, and then just general data from other cities, you know, and all kinds of data sources that will ultimately help influence this project moving forward. In terms of timeline, we are here in the spring, kicking off with you all and beginning to collect public feedback. The next slide will have public feedback mechanisms, but I'll also put them in the chat since you can't click on my presentation. Once we move, you know, we'll start collecting public feedback now and start transitioning that feedback into a concept as we move into the summer timeframe. And then summer into fall, we'll kind of work with the community to review those concepts, refine those concepts, and come to, you know, what basically will turn into a design in 2024 and a project that will be implemented in 2025. As I mentioned, we have multiple, or we're kicking off our input with the community. We have multiple mechanisms for feedback. We have a feedback form, we have an email address, and then, you know, if folks don't want to deal with the email and feedback forms, we also have a phone number that you can call and leave a message with your, you know, audio feedback for us. Again, I'll put this information in the chat since I know there's kind of a lot on the screen and a lot that I just went over. But this is the presentation. We're really just getting this started. We want to make sure you know about it. We want to make sure that you know how to give feedback, but also if you could connect us to your communities, your, you know, SMDs, you know, whatever kind of communities you're tied into this local area to start getting this feedback to help inform the project as we move it forward through this year.
So are you comfortable taking questions?
Sure, yeah.
Excellent. I see we have a question from Commissioner George.
Thank you so much, Zach, for joining us. It's really exciting to hear more about WMATA's plans for the bus and DDOT plans for the bus priority project. I think it's a really important project that I think is one of the reasons that I ended up running for ANC to help make sure that you get great community input and the support that you need to really transform Georgia Avenue into a transit corridor that works for all the people that rely on transit to get into the city. I had a couple questions that I was hoping you might be able to share some thoughts on. One is, you showed the map of other bus priority projects that have been done in other parts of the city. Could you share any effect, what the effects you have found in other corridors on, you know, how much faster the buses move once you've done a bus priority project and how much time you're able to save on trips? And then the other question I had is, would DDOT consider, I think it's really exciting to have the opportunity to redesign Georgia Avenue, which, as you know, it is a high priority corridor for Vision Zero and sees a lot of accidents and innumerable close calls every day. Has DDOT thought at all about whether it will be able to put in place interim traffic calming measures as the design process moves forward prior to full implementation in 2025 or later, once the project is like fully baked?
Yeah. And so in terms of the savings or the time savings and things like that, metrics, I know it's been a little difficult to measure up until like very recently, just because of the pandemic, and the buses were on supplemental schedules for a while, and automobile traffic was like down in some areas, and some areas it's back up to normal. So I know other folks on my team have just started kind of like getting back into these analyses now that traffic is back to more to normal. A lot of our bus routes, or some of our bus routes, are kind of more back to normal-ish, normal enough that we can like do some comparison at least to like pre-pandemic and pre-bus lanes. I don't have specific numbers off the top of my head. I heard earlier that like H&I downtown are working very well. I don't know. I'll have to like get the numbers to help quantify very well. That's just kind of anecdotally what I heard, but I can get more of that information now that we're kind of at the point where we're able to start, getting like good numbers at this point in pandemic, post-pandemic, kind of whatever you want to call it. In terms of Vision Zero safety improvements, that's something I'll have to talk to the Vision Zero team. We're coordinating very closely with them on this, and I know there's a lot of attention on Georgia Avenue. I mean, I definitely know, right, there's a lot of improvements coming to Kennedy Street and that intersection of Georgia and Kennedy, and several intersections, I guess, in that area that are kind of moving forward. They're not waiting for us. They're on their own timeline, and we will adapt to kind of what they're doing. I don't think they're doing anything that would impact, potential improvements. And in fact, I think they're probably like preempting bus priority by putting bus priority improvements at that intersection. But I'll have to think or talk with our Vision Zero team to see if there's any opportunity to do more things more quickly at other intersections.
Thanks.
Or other other places on the corridor. I guess it doesn't necessarily need to be an intersection.
Commissioner Cornelius.
Sorry about that. I couldn't find the mute. Mr. Gambetti Mendez, is that correct?
Yeah.
When I'm of the thought process again, that there should be a balance. I know that my fellow colleague, Commissioner George, and others are in much better shape than I am. But in any case, as Commissioner Pickney mentioned earlier during the meeting, I know that there's this sort of movement towards public transportation, etc. But when you're eliciting public feedback, is that actually going to be taken into serious consideration? Meaning, as Commissioner Pickney mentioned, when I look at this type of project, I see an additional decrease in parking spots. I can only think of when I worked downtown at 16th and K, and I didn't think the way that was designed was very effective at all. It was actually pretty unsafe. So I guess my question is this already sort of in motion, and will public input actually be taken into serious consideration?
So what I'm showing on the screen here, I think it's still screen sharing, is, yep, I mean, public input is a major kind of input factor to the project. There are kind of multiple input factors, right, including like the safety needs. And then, as you said, kind of like balancing. There's a lot of people on these buses every day who also need some kind of like investment in making sure that their buses are not, overly delayed or slow. So it is an input, one of several inputs to the project.
Commissioner Lucarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Mendez, thank you for the presentation. This is really great. I have a question for you. How many vehicles per day does Georgia Avenue currently move?
It varies depending on where you are on the corridor, but let's say around 20 to 25,000.
Okay, and how many average daily boardings are there between the 70 and the 79?
So we had I have 2019 data is off the top of my head. It was 17,000, about 17,500.
Between the two buses.
That was the 70 plus the 79. Yeah.
Got it. And that's not including the folks that, you know, are then taking that trip onto transit. And so I think the point I'm trying to illustrate, particularly for some of my fellow commissioners, is that, you know, Georgia Avenue moves a lot of people that aren't in single occupied vehicles. And if the city wants to reach, goals and merits of, you know, not of zero traffic fatalities, you know, this is the direction that we have to take. I want to thank you for the presentation, and I also just, you know, want to second some of the comments that Commissioner George made, which is that, you know, these projects are great and they're going to be transformative. They're going to make transit much more useful along the corridor. I hope that DDOT and WMATA are studying ways in which to manage headways more effectively, because if a bus carrying 70 people has to share the same space as an SUV that has one driver trying to make their way from Silver Spring to downtown, that it's not equitable. And so, you know, if you look at bus rapid transit projects around the country, you know, they prioritize the lane for the bus because the bus, you know, is carrying more people and taking up less space. But I would say that, you know, we definitely need to be looking at, we shouldn't let a project that's several years down the road prevent us from doing interim measures that are still going to keep the people along the corridor safe, because it is it's very precarious to cross that street. We all know the incidents that have occurred along it. And so I would just implore DDOT, implore them to look at ways, particularly when there are fatal or horrific crashes, whether it's injury, loss of life, or property, and find a way to really slow the folks down, because the reason people speed along that corridor is because the intersection density is it's not as porous as some of the, you know, older, you know, denser parts of the city. And, you know, the signalized intersections or traffic calmed intersections are few and far between. And so it allows people to, you know, the design speed is much higher than what's posted on the sign. So I hope that we can look at ways, particularly when there are serious crashes. And I know this is kind of a little tangential to the bus priority program, but because you're here, I just wanted to drop that in because Mr. George reminded me of it. So thank you very much. And I think this is a great project. I use the 70 and 79 when I commute into Alexandria 3 days a week, because I live on Kennedy and 7th. So, and I frequently board the bus with, you know, between 10 and 15 people every time. So I look forward to seeing more frequent, useful headways. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the general public? Oh, I see one from Mr. Amin. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Amene, but thank you. That was, yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm joining this meeting late and I'm not able to see what's on screen. If the person who's sharing could like stop sharing and then share again, I think kind of frozen on my side. But anyway, I wanted to comment a little bit about, I don't know if this is relevant. Does this project reach all the way down to New Hampshire? Sorry, if there is, I do have a follow-up about that specific, the spacing between those bus stops. I do have a question about that, but I don't want to go into that unless this is part of the project.
So the specific project that we're kicking off today starts at Kansas and goes up to Missouri, but I'm actually working on another project that goes from Kansas down through New Hampshire, down to Berry Place, adjacent to Howard University. So I'll maybe drop my email in the chat. Maybe if you want to email me, or we can hop on a phone call or something about those bus stops. I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
I mean, I can be very quick about it. It's specifically about the spacing for 79 that I'm concerned about, and making sure, like I got off. I know we try to space out the 79, but I would like to really encourage having a stop on either side of New Hampshire, because it's very important for making connections. The distance right now is just huge between especially when you get close to New Hampshire. So we miss our connections, and we're not able to take 79. And so I want to encourage, even though we want large spaces between stops for 79, not to have on either side of New Hampshire a stop for 79 is what I want to encourage. But I can reach out as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other quick questions from the general public? Mr. Gambetta Mendez, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate your presence.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Next up, we have representatives from the Office of Tenant Advocacy, Christopher Lucas and Cristobal Pugh. And I think that they needed screen sharing capabilities as well, right?
Yeah. I'm Christopher Lucas with the Office of Tenant Ad, and I have for a few months.
I don't know if it's just me, but I'm having a little trouble hearing you. I think we've got a bad connection, but I can't tell if that's just me.
No, it's for me too.
Yeah, he said muffled. Yes, me too.
No deal.
I'll try it again. Can you hear better now?
Hello? Hi, I can take
Can you hear
over.
better now?
I can take over, Christopher. Hi, good evening. So I'll just get right into it. We're the DC Office of the Tenant Advocate. So we have a little presentation for you guys that tells a little bit of what we do. So I'm going to jump right into it. Can you guys see the shared screen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, excellent. So basically, our office was created in 2006, and we're an independent DC government agency that is charged by statute with providing legal, policy advocacy, emergency housing, education, and community outreach services. So essentially, we do that with our 4 branches. The first branch, which is what 9 out of 10 people call for, is the legal branch. So the legal branch provides brief legal services to thousands of tenants in the District of Columbia, and in certain cases provides full or limited representation. OTA attorneys may also assist tenants in their self-representation efforts and in navigating mediation, alternative dispute resolution forums. And then essentially the way that this works is that tenants call our intake line, 202-719-6560. If there's one thing you guys get from this presentation, that phone number would be it. So they can call for issues like if they're at risk of eviction, if they get a rent increase and they're not sure if it's a lawful rent increase, lease related questions, housing code violations, pests, mold, etc. Security deposits, right? If the landlord doesn't give you back the security deposit, we can help with that. Also the TOPA, which is the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, we help tenants exercise those rights, and then also just enforcing their rights as tenants. So essentially how this is going to work is the tenant calls our intake line, and then that tenant is going to be assigned to either a case management specialist or an attorney advisor in the order in which it was received, and also depending on the issue. If it's an issue that requires legal analysis, it's clear it's going to go to an attorney. If it's an issue that it can be just responded to by stating what the law is just objectively, then a case management specialist can assist them, right? So the CSMs and attorney advisors call the tenant back and to discuss basically the issue and to develop actions to address those issues, right? And in some cases, again, we can either go to court and represent the tenants or refer the tenant to outside legal counsel. The next branch is our policy branch. So the policy branch works with governmental and community partners and entities, including the DC Council, the mayor's office, executive agencies, the courts, tenant stakeholders, the tenant bar, advocates, and others to promote better tenant protections and policies in the district. So we saw a lot of that going on during the COVID pandemic with the temporary and emergency laws, which basically prohibited evictions, and then they limited evictions. And also there was no rent increases during the pandemic and other sort of laws. And that's what our policy advocacy branch does. So education community outreach is myself, Christopher Lucas, and 2 more people for 400,000 tenants. So it's 4 of us. So what we do is we develop educational materials, classes, as well as virtual tutorials on issues that are important to tenants in the district. And we also participate in outreach activities. Now, essentially, it's the same number, right? So that's why that's the one thing, the one takeaway from today, 202-719-6560. So you can call our office and you can ask for assistance in forming and sustaining a tenant organization. We can do customized classes for tenants on issues that are important to them. In particular, housing accommodations. You can request the OTA, attend a community event, request a listening session, which is when we go out to different housing accommodation and essentially try to diagnose what's going on there to try to see how to address those problems. And then also, we're, due again to the public health emergency, we have a big push for eviction prevention, right? So if you know people that are at risk of eviction, tell them to call our phone. So lastly, this is also a very important program, the Temporary Emergency Housing Program. This is a unique program to the District of Columbia. No other large metropolitan city in the United States has this. So basically, this assists tenants who have been displaced by a fire, flood, or another government closure, okay? How the program works is that the incident scene, the tenants are going to be either received by the Department of Buildings, Homeland Security and Emergency Management, DC Fire, or the Red Cross. Those 4 participating agencies are going to send us an alert with the names, addresses, amount of people that have been displaced, and then our program steps in to provide emergency housing. Now, OTA provides temporary emergency housing, which are generally hotel accommodations, and it's temporary, it's a stopgap, right? So if there's a fire, the individuals or families will have a certain amount of time in order to, look for more permanent housing. We also provide storage for personal belongings and coordinate services with other district agencies. Now, like I said earlier, we're a big eviction prevention push. So the last couple of slides here are going to be essentially on eviction prevention. So in DC, there's 10 statutory reasons to evict a tenant, right? The most common ones are non-payment of rent and lease violations. Now, all tenants being lawfully evicted in the District of Columbia must receive a written notice with various requirements, including the reason for the eviction. Now, a tenant who is being, and again, there's more to this, and that's why the one takeaway is the phone number, right? So a tenant who is being lawfully evicted in the District of Columbia has the right to a written notice from the landlord describing the reason for the eviction, an opportunity to cure if it is a lease violation, if the lease violation is a reason for the eviction, an opportunity to challenge the landlord's claims in court, and then to prevent the eviction by paying the full amount of rent owed if the action is for non-payment of rent. Now, in order to evict a tenant in the District of Columbia, all landlords must go through the judicial process, right? And now, after the judicial process, and this is something that, again, if the tenant is at risk of eviction, please tell them to call our office. Now, if the landlord prevails and wins the case, wins the eviction case, the court issues a writ of restitution, which is essentially a legal order that permits a landlord to take possession of that unit back from the landlord. In DC, all lawful evictions must be scheduled and executed by the United States Marshal Service, right? Self-help evictions are completely prohibited, right? So that's when the landlords used to change or continue, they still do some, change the locks on the doors or remove the tenant's belongings without the presence of a deputy United States Marshal. It's an unlawful eviction. So in those situations, if you or somebody you know is in that situation, what the tenant needs to do is have a document that shows that they have a right of possession of that unit. By far, the best document would be the lease. If not, let's say a utility bill with their name and address on it, and then call MPD. And they should help the tenant regain access to that unit. So if you have additional questions or concerns about your tenant rights, call our phone number. It's 202-719-6560. By statute, if you're a tenant in the District of Columbia and you call our office, we have to help. So just call our office, please. We have a social media website, which I'm going to actually show you 2 more things real quick if I have time here. Let me go to this. So we have a social media. Everybody does, right? So if you guys can see this, we have important announcements on here all the time. So the last one, which is, the pinned tweet right there, is that ERAP ran out of money March 10th at midnight, basically, right? So then we post that on there. We have eviction prevention classes, for example, other information that's also important for tenants. So please, if you'd like to, follow us on Twitter if you're interested about knowing more about your rights as a tenant. And lastly, if I may, commissioners, the Office of the Tenant Advocate, we also produced, if you guys, I think it's up now, we have a YouTube channel. So the YouTube channel has tutorials on issues that are important for tenants. Right. So besides referring tenants to our office, if they need legal assistance or education, community outreach services, etc., please refer them if they need help to our tutorials. They're in Spanish and in English. We have some in Amharic as well. So please know that these are resources that are available for all tenants in the District of Columbia at their convenience. With that, commissioners, that concludes the presentation. I can take any questions if there are any.
Questions first from any of the commissioners? Thank you, by the way, Mr. Pugh, for
Of course.
speaking. And Mr. Lucas, sorry that we had some connection trouble there. Questions from any commissioners? Commissioner Marincic.
Hello, sorry, I'm having connection issues too, but I just want to say OTA is one of the best kept secrets in DC government. I work with them frequently in my day job for the Office of the People's Counsel. We are constantly referring back and forth. They are a huge resource. And I always say free lawyer. When you hear that, you definitely write down that number. So they are a huge resource. Please, if you know anyone who has any kind of landlord-tenant issue, reach out to them. And my agency too, but definitely them.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Pinckney.
I would like to say thank you to this office for their help on a number of different levels. We started a tenant association here in Todd A. Lee. I don't know if he remembers coming over here. And, you know, we're up and running. Thank you very much. Number two, I can vouch wholeheartedly for the support, the knowledge and information that they have to help tenants, no matter what situation you're in. So please never feel alone. This is a wonderful, wonderful service that is offered to renters in the city. Thank you for coming by, gentlemen.
Commissioner, thank you.
Don't hold my technology issues against me.
We've all gone through it, Mr. Lucas. None of us will judge you for it. Any other questions from commissioners? Questions from the general public? Mr. Commissioner Marincic, do you still have your hand raised, or is that from before or a new question? I'm going to assume that's
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Well, thank you both for joining us tonight. We very much appreciate your time.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you. I understand that someone from Cure the Streets, Mr. Johnson, is still here.
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Mr. Johnson, thank you for joining us.
Perfect. Hey, how you doing there? Thank you guys for having me. Another shameless OTA plug. I heard somebody else giving praises, but I love the guys over there, Cristobal, Chris Lucas, Tamala, all are very helpful and just overall awesome people when I work with them. So definitely suggest utilizing those guys as a tool in the district. I had to get that out of the way, but good evening, ANC 4D. My name is Byron Johnson. I'm a program analyst from the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. I'm one of the one's newest additions in an attempt to enhance outreach efforts from our office. And I just wanted to provide a brief introduction to the commission and its residents on behalf of my office. Just really quickly, and I'll drop some support and links to everything that I'll pretty much go over here in the chat with more depth of a look for you guys, along with the public safety survey that I would love if residents and commissioners would fill out if you guys got a chance. So our office pushes a citywide effort with a total of 25 priority communities across the district. We approach gun violence from a public health perspective. That looks like providing at-risk tiers in the priority communities with resources essential to success, such as housing, vital documents, job training, mental health resources, and much more. A more in-depth look at that work looks like identifying community and interpersonal conflicts that have the potential to escalate to violence. Also supporting the facilitation of ceasefires and mediations in the communities. We partner with a bevy of community leaders, organizations, and government agencies to tackle the multifaceted issue. As it pertains to 4D, the one's priority looks to be in 4D03, right along the Georgia Avenue, Petworth area, along with the Kennedy Street corridor, and also including a couple of the surrounding blocks in the area by default. Life Deeds is actually going to be the one's provider for both of these areas, and Mr. Bell, Mr. Roger Bell, he's the program manager over at Life Deeds, and I'll drop that information in the chat as well. This is also, as Chair mentioned, a Cure the Streets area. So ones in Cure the Streets differ a little. Cure the Streets is through Office of Attorney General. The cure provider for that area is actually Inner City. So you guys are one of the few to have kind of a double dipping thing going on there. So I'll drop some information for inner city in the chat, but I actually got to get a little bit more in depth. Like I said, I'm a new addition to the one, so I'm excited to make all these connections here with you guys. Just lastly, my office just received our new director, Director Lindy Holly Harper. And like I mentioned before, we do have that public safety survey. It's an attempt to capture community sentiment around public safety. We want to reiterate the importance of having the residents and ANC's voices heard surrounding the topic. So please take a moment and complete the survey and share it with others. I look forward to collaborating with the commissioners, residents in regards to violence interruption, and collaborate on any potential outreach efforts or events within the ANC in these priority areas. And I'll take any questions now. And I'll drop the information in the chat because I have a lot I'm going to flood you guys with.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate it. Mr. Lucas, we'll get to you in a second. We're going to, our usual process, we start with commissioners first, if that's all right. So starting with commissioners, Commissioner Weigel.
I was just clapping my hands. I didn't need to talk.
Sorry. Okay.
Appreciate you, Commissioner.
Confuse
for
the
real.
hand emoji.
Yep, I saw the hand. It was just natural reaction, but just excited to just in general, just collaborate and keep things positive.
Perfect. And I'll be on the call throughout this duration. Getting the issues that I hear around the call, even if it's not in the priority communities, we're still trying to tackle, like I said, gun violence in these areas. And I'll drop my information inside of the in the chat as well.
Thank you so much.
Question from Commissioner Judson.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Byron, for being here this evening. I'm just curious, which part of Kennedy Street are you working on? Is it from Georgia all the way to North Capitol, or are there certain parts?
So I'll provide commissioners and residents as well with the map. It looks like it's pretty much throughout the entire duration. I think from around the 400 block, if I'm not mistaken, through the 11 or 700 block. I got to go back and double check it. I don't have it in front of me. I'm on my phone, unfortunately. Sorry about that. But I will drop the link to the map in the chat, and also give you guys Life Deeds direct contact information to Mr. Bell, because they actually do active walks and also have connections with tiers along that block, and we can tackle any issues you guys are having along that area. We're definitely doing some work already in that area, and I'm familiar with some of the outreach they're doing in the 700 block of Kennedy, if I'm not mistaken. So I can get you exactly what that looks like. I'm citywide, so sorry if off the top of my head, I'm still learning everything. I'm learning Ward 8, wards 1 through 8. I'm sorry right now. But definitely I'll get you guys that info from Mr. Bill.
No, all good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And yeah, looking forward to partnering and working together. So thanks for being here.
Perfect. And I'll send it over to you, Chair. I can do it individually to everybody, but I'll make sure it gets in your hands as well, Chair.
Commissioner George.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Mr. Johnson. We really appreciate it. Could you talk a little bit about how ANCs and engaged members of the community can help, flag problems for your office, support your work, whether there are resources that you all need that you aren't getting that we might be able to help with? Just any thoughts that you might have on how we can kind of be good partners to help push your work along.
Yeah, most definitely. So ultimately, just for my role in it anyway, with the outreach portion of it, I want to get out and collaborate with you guys. We have folks already on the ground and engaging with tiers in the communities, but if you guys are still experiencing issues in these areas, or the hotspots, or the priority communities, what we call them, we can definitely flag. So it's a little bit different from MPD, where the folks go out and kind of, like I said, it's a public health approach. So if we're trying to get guys who are usually outside hanging out and about access to, whether it's job resources, trainings, or any sometimes you find folks don't have something as simple as a driver's license or an ID to even attain any of these things. So getting them the basics. If you notice, it's you guys have an abscess that doesn't seem to be going away. That's where our outreach kind of will pour more into that area. So just kind of flagging that in that sense, the same way you kind of flagged the MPD, but a lot different of an approach. So the same areas that you guys will have issues with, like gun violence or any just even loitering issues, I've come to find in some of the abscesses is what you'll find, and more so inviting the gun violence is the folks that are sitting out and about. So a lot of what we do tackles that idle time that you guys may see. So just identifying those areas and helping us out with that.
Commissioner Pinckney.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for coming by. I really applaud what you're doing. You're very, very, just very smart. I mean, you've been in your position for 2 weeks and you've gotten to move that fast. My SMD is on between Ace and Georgia.
Okay.
And while we do not have the focus of the activity anymore, because you know the hot activity was all of Kennedy Street at one point. Now it's kind of pushed back. But my constituents are still touched by the activity between 7th and 4th, wanting to go to participate, you know, to patronize a store, to just taking a walk with their families, etc. So would we also be invited or engaged in this process, even though we're not in that window that you just mentioned?
Yep. So like I said, so if I think what you mentioned is actually a surrounding block of the area, because Kennedy Street is one focal point, but I know along Georgia Avenue and Petworth is also another focal point. I got to get I would love to pinpoint exactly where your SMD falls, and I'll look that up right after I hop off of here. But it looks like there may be efforts in that surrounding area that should pour over into it, and we do have a floating team. Which is why I'm asking that commissioners are able to flag any abscesses you do have in your community that you may not actually see on our priority communities. We do have a floating team available to attack these areas as well, or attack the issues in this area as well, and get the folks the assistance they need.
Yeah, because I don't want to leave out the activity may skip like the block I'm in, block over, but it is quite active.
Yep.
At Kennedy in Georgia.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. Right near the bus stop area, right?
Right. And the safety of my constituents or anybody going up to Georgia, especially the people who are still working early in the morning, because we still have very dark spaces that need lighting, but people have come to starting to be in dark spaces and jumping out on people or whatever. So, you know, I believe you're going to take care of all of us, but I just wanted to know if we were on your radar at all.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And that's, like I said, that lingers, that area that you're speaking of is right kind of the beginning point, used to be the beginning point, but it's still kind of, like you said, still sees the effects of that. But yeah, definitely within the focal point. And I'll try to get Mr. Bell's schedule for that area and see if we can get maybe some ANCs out there along with Light Ds and just to engage with the provider in the community at the same time. I think would be a good look for 4D.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Lucas, did you still have a question or was it answered?
Mr. Lucas.
Well, you all have actually answered everything. I was just wanting to encourage you all to work with Cure the Streets and Mr. Johnson and thank him for his words for the Office of the Tenant Advocate. But they are definitely a hands-on organization that we utilize to deal with tenant associations in some areas that need their attention. So they're a very good resource. And I would say thank you all for inviting us tonight, and you have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Lucas.
Commissioner Pinckney, did you have another question, or is that your hand raised from before?
You.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Mr. Johnson, thank you very much for joining us this evening. We very much appreciate your presence and all the hard work that you're doing for our community. We know it's not easy work, but we very much value what you're doing to help us. So thank you.
Thank you guys. My apologies early for flooding the chat, but I'm about to drop a lot of info for you guys.
No, please feel free to go ahead and do it. Thank you. We're going to jump back a little bit now that we finished with the city official comments. We skipped over the treasurer's report because Commissioner Cornelius was not available at the time, but Commissioner Cornelius, are you available now to give a treasurer's report?
Here I am, yes. Good evening, everybody. Our current balance is $8,994.42. We're still awaiting being approved for our security fund, at which point I'll be able to start writing checks officially for certain things, for example, grants, etc., which we look forward to as a commission to get started on. And also next month, we will be voting on our quarterly report as well, so that we will inevitably get our Q2 disbursement of funds from ANC / the DC government. So that's my update for this evening, Chair.
Thank you. Questions from any of the commissioners? Questions from any of the public? No? Thank you, Commissioner Cornelius. We appreciate it. Next up, we have commissioner announcements. I'll start with one quick one, just a reminder about our upcoming meetings. The next public meeting will be held on April 19th, which will be conducted on Zoom, just like this one. Prior to that, we will have an executive meeting, which will be for the commissioners, but anyone from the public is welcome to attend that as well. That's scheduled for April 5th. Again, those are just business meetings. We don't vote on anything during those meetings. We mostly figure out what the agenda is going to be, but they are open to the public as well. Any other announcements from any commissioners? All right, we'll move along then. Next up, we have an opportunity for community comments. So this is an opportunity for the public to voice any questions or concerns to the commission. In the interest of time, we'd ask that you keep your comments limited to 2 minutes if possible, or as close to that as possible. So we will now open it up to the public. Any questions or comments from anyone in the community? Going once. Ms. Wesley.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I have a comment to make. You know that transportation and safety are huge in the city. I just got back from Chicago the other day for work, and I noticed that almost every street has a four-way stop. And I wondered if something like that could be implemented in the city, because everybody knows that they have to stop. So that we don't have a lot of those. So I'm thinking that we just had a serious accident when somebody ran a stop sign, and the other street there was not a stop sign. And I just wonder if little things like that make a difference.
I will. Oh, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I finished that one. I just have one more comment after that. Please go ahead and comment.
I was just going to say, Ms. Wesley, I actually got into quite an argument with the Department of Transportation about that a few years ago, because I was trying to get a four-way stop sign in at the end of my block. And they told me that it was their policy to not put in four-way stop signs in the city because they believed that it was actually worse for accidents. I'm not sure that I believe that. I think that at least on my block, the four-way stop sign is much safer. But it was quite a struggle to get them to agree to it. So I don't disagree with you, but I think that's certainly an issue that we can raise with DOT again about what their policy is on four-way stop signs.
Oh, thank you so much. And real quick, I'd like to thank people for continuing to pick up after their dogs in the Lorenzo Allen Park. And we'll be getting ready for our spring decoration soon. And if you are interested in participating with us, put your name in the chat and I'll give you a call. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Uptown Main Street.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, great. Well, good evening, everybody. Yes, this is Gabrielle on behalf of Uptown Main Street. Just wanted to have folks save the date for some activities that we'll be having close to Kennedy Street coming up right now in the spring. You may know that Porch Fest is coming on April 22nd, but the event has grown quite a bit, and there will be music in Brightwood Park as well. And businesses on the 700 block of Kennedy Street are planning their own music node, and we will be supporting that mini concert on 7th and Kennedy. So that's on the Saturday, the 22nd. If there is a rain date of the 29th, so save the date for that. We were also approached by the Office of Public Safety and Justice, and I'm not sure if this is which agency is coming from, but there is an Earth Day cleanup day around the district. And it is the same day, April 22nd. So we may join forces with whoever's organizing the Earth Day cleanup, whoever wants to do a cleanup that morning of Porch Fest along Kennedy Street. We would request Kennedy Street. Certainly Main Street can also give some supplies for that if there is not enough, or to join forces with whatever DC agency. So stay tuned for that. And then for Kennedy Street, we will bring back the movie nights and the foam party. So there is a schools out foam party and movie night on Friday. Is it Friday the 23rd or the 24th of June? I have to double check. The last day of school. And we will have some other events over the summer, including another movie night. And then of course, later on, we will bring back Art All Night and that type of activity. But immediately right now, for the spring, stay tuned for music, for Porch Fest, the cleanup, movies. And there is going to be also an event at the corner of Kennedy and 14th Street on June 10th. That is a Saturday. So that is going to be another family-friendly festival on that corner, which is known as the Colorado Pine. So that's my announcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mene, did I get it right this time?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. I just wanted to uplift what the other person said, I believe Zilla, about stop signs and using designs like that to slow down traffic and, and move towards Vision Zero. And I wanted to ask about another thing, which is that I'm becoming really concerned about, which is the speed at which Missouri Avenue really moves. And I wanted to ask, and if there is interest, of working with the ANC to our north, putting together some sort of coordinated, like we need to slow it down. We need traffic calming. There's just so many things we could do. And there's also just not very good bus service along that line. And I'm just wondering, like, if there's any plans for, a coordinated, because coming right around that corner from Georgia, it's incredibly dangerous. We need, and just coming down that hill, there's just so many things we could do visually. We might want to even consider, I don't know, dropping to one lane. But like, yeah, just wanted to ask about if there's anything movement in that field, anything, yeah. Jack.
I don't know if any of the other commissioners know about any specific steps that DOT has taken about that. I will agree with you, Mr. Mene. I think it's particularly that intersection of Georgia Avenue in Missouri is one of the most idiotic intersections I've ever seen. It just seems ripe for all kinds of traffic disasters. I don't know of any steps that DOT is taking to fix that, but do any of the commissioners know? If not, we can certainly look into that for you, sir.
This is Joy Pinkney. another one of the constituents, because that's right at the edge of the boundaries for SMD 4D01. And that was mentioned before. So, I mean, I'd be happy to work with, you or get some information about any intent on traffic calming at that place. And if there isn't any intent, then absolutely having a conversation with you, or if you can send me your suggestions. And of course, I think the commission, when I report back to the commission about that, we can maybe talk about it.
Well, Mr.
Is
Chair,
that okay?
Go ahead, Ms. Pinckney.
Oh, no, I'm done. Go.
Well, I was just going to say, to Mr. Abel's point, we're going to be talking later tonight about establishing committees within, within 4D, and, Vision Zero is something that's very keen and close to me. I survived being hit by a dangerous driver shortly after moving to the district. And I can tell you, it's something that I think about a lot. And, there's a lot of individuals in this city that unfortunately don't make it home to the dinner table. And I think about that every time I cross that intersection. And so, our authority as a body is very limited in what we can do to compel the city to make changes. And as someone who actually is a transportation planner myself, I can tell you that, a redesign or a reimagining of Missouri would be a long process. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't go for it, but it's just to make you aware, as you may know. But as a transportation committee, I look forward to hearing input from folks like yourself about, and Ms. Pinckney and others, about places that need more attention, because that's the whole point of this, subgroup that we'll be talking about later. And so I look forward to hearing from you and other folks about areas where, we should encourage DDOT to do better and think differently, because you're right, it's not safe. And I personally fear for my life every time I use it, and I frequent that Walmart, weekly on foot. And so I hear you, and I look forward to hearing from others. Thanks.
I'll just add to that very briefly, Commissioner, that so through DOT's website, you're able to file requests for things like traffic studies. And the way that DOT does this is they take a look at how many people have reported about particular streets or intersections, and they prioritize the ones that have had the most complaints. So all that's a way to say that the more the neighborhood reports about these issues, in theory at least, the more that this will become a priority for DOT. So I would encourage everyone who's on the call tonight, who's experiencing issues on Missouri Avenue or at that intersection or anywhere in the city where there's a traffic issue, to report it to DOT. And the more that neighbors do that, the higher that rises up in the DOT priority list. Commissioner Pinckney.
Yes. I also just wanted to say, in thinking about that traffic, man, the people are coming from Maryland through Rock Creek Park, through most places where there aren't heavy pedestrians, heavy, homes, etc. And so when you're coming up from the Rockville type of area through, trying to get to, because many of them don't even live in the city, the traffic flow. They're coming and going into another part of Maryland on the other side. That's just coming through. And the speed limit before they get to that intersection is set, and you don't really see the change in the speed limit or whatever, but we're comfortable in understanding there is no police presence in terms of ticketing or whatever at that intersection as well. So people have been kind of doing what they do. And I agree with Anthony, that's the craziest place, because those lights just make no sense to me at all either. So I'm 100% with you guys.
Are there other comments or questions from the general public? Okay, moving on to old business from last month. First up, we've got Mariachi Bar and Grill, Commissioner Lucarelli.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so we worked this week internally to draft a settlement document or instrument, and we passed that along to Mariachi. We're waiting to hear back on their response, and we hope to bring something before this body soon.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Pinckney, we've got Berean Baptist Church up next. Do we have any updates? You're muted, Commissioner.
Thank you. Sorry. I rise before you guys now. We all have the resolution in support of the resolution that was presented to us by ANC SMD 4B, ANC 4B, because of the changes in the boundaries. We have been blessed with the Berean Baptist Church to work with. All of us as commissioners agree that this project, where they are increasing the size of the church, they're adding living quarters for seniors who are low-income seniors, and they have kept the community involved, and they presented to us last month, and I am asking for a vote for the, I'm asking Mr. Chair, I move that the commission approve the resolution in support of the Berean Baptist Church and their proposed project.
And just to clarify, Commissioner Pinckney, for the general public and for all of us, Commissioner Morensic confirmed that we don't have to read the wording of the resolution, since it's been posted online on our website, so it's available to read there. So we don't actually have to read through it right now. But if anyone in the public is interested in reading it, it's not posted on the 4D ANC website. Thank you, Commissioner Pinckney. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Having been moved and seconded, the matter is now up for debate. Commissioner Pinckney, anything that you want to say about it? Other than what you've already said? All right. Any comments from any of the commissioners? Are there
I would
any?
just like to say, I think it's a great project that makes much better use of the land, and I'm happy to support it.
I echo what Commissioner Lucarelli said.
Yeah, I love that it's keeping DC residents in DC.
Are you ready for the question then?
Yes.
So the question before us is the adoption of the motion proposed by Commissioner Pinckney. We have to do this by a roll call vote. So I'll just call you by your commission. And then Secretary George, if you don't mind just recording the votes for the record. So starting with Commissioner Joy Pinckney. Oh, please say aye if you support it. Yeah, or yes. Thank you. Commissioner Kate Judson.
Aye.
Commissioner Carson Lucarelli.
So moved.
Commissioner CC Corniotis.
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen Morensic.
Aye.
Commissioner Mon George.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark Weigel.
Big aye.
And I am an aye as well. The ayes have it, so the motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Pinckney. Next up, we have Mama Chepa, Cocina Latina. So if all of you recall, Mama Chepa is a small restaurant that's opening up in a little strip mall at the intersection of New Hampshire and Gallatin. They were here last month to talk about it. They've applied for an opera license. We've reached a settlement agreement with them. The settlement agreement has been shared with all of the commissioners. It will be posted publicly. The basic terms of the settlement agreement are that Mama Chepa has agreed to cease their live music on weekdays by 11 p.m. and by 1 a.m. on weekends. They have agreed to keep their hours within 10 a.m. and 2 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then 10 a.m. through 3 a.m. Friday through Saturday. Like they said to us at the meeting last month, they don't intend to actually operate during those hours, but they wanted to retain the license to have some, for those hours, to have some flexibility in case they wanted to stay open for a special event. They've also agreed to take care of public space and trash. They've agreed to take care of rats and vermin control, to take reasonable steps to ensure sound barriers so that they're not disturbing the neighbors. They've also agreed to cooperate with MPD and to take steps to curb public drinking and any drug activity in the area. Are there any questions about that from any of the commissioners or the general public before I move the motion? Okay, so I move to adopt the settlement agreement that was submitted and shared with all the commissioners this past week. Can I have a second?
Second.
Are we ready for the question?
Yes.
All right, roll call vote again. Commissioner Pinckney,
Aye.
Commissioner Judson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lucarelli,
Aye.
Commissioner Corniotis,
Aye.
Commissioner Morensic,
Aye.
Commissioner George,
Aye.
Commissioner Weigel,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, so the motion carries. Thank you all. Next up, Commissioner George, do you have anything to say about the alley naming? I know you said that you wanted to postpone any kind of formal activity, but was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I could just give a quick update as to where things stand. So this is about the naming of the alley that sits between Buchanan and Crittenden Street Northwest and 9th and Georgia Avenue Northwest. At our January meeting, we introduced the project that was going to be undertaken there and the process of naming the alley, and called for name ideas from the public and from our neighbors. At the February meeting, we shared 3 of the names that the 3 suggestions that we had gotten, which were Elizabeth Catlett, David Driscoll, and AJ Cooper III. 3 wonderful DC luminaries. I think all of us, I think I personally would say I would be happy to have an alley named after any of those 3 remarkable individuals. Between the February meeting and today's meeting, I knocked on the doors of all the neighbors on the block and left flyers explaining kind of where things stand, and tried to get feedback from neighbors about which of the potential names they feel strongly about, as well as soliciting feedback from my fellow commissioners on 4D. And I think the consensus that I have heard is that our neighborhood would be very excited to name the alley after Elizabeth Catlett. I can put a link in the chat to her Wikipedia page. I think it will be an honor to be able to name an alley after her in our district. The process going forward will be that Commissioner Louis George's office actually will first introduce legislation to name the alley, and then at our next meeting, we as an ANC can tackle whether we will endorse that legislation by our own resolution. The actual naming of the alley will probably get finalized late summer or early fall, I think.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner George. Next up for new business, we've got a zoning adjustment from Commissioner Morensic.
Hello, yes. Are the owners of the parties requesting the zoning adjustment on the call right now?
Yes, this is Michael Potter. My wife is also an owner, and she is putting our small children to bed. So she may join me.
I know that they were
not.
here early, at least I saw them. Let me see, try one more time. Is anyone here from the requesting the zoning?
Can folks hear me?
Yeah, Mr. Potter, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Stephen, can you hear Michael?
Maybe Commissioner.
Well, I have a presentation.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
No, please,
so I'd be
please
happy
go ahead.
to you can step here too. So my wife is here and she does own the property, so she's gonna wave as well. Give me just 1 sec to load it up. My
Okay.
Zoom skills are pretty rusty. But okay, can folks see the screen I'm sharing?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, my lovely wife Skylar and I live in Ward 1, we're proud Washingtonians, and we're also the proud owners of the building that we're all looking at here. And this is 329 Delafield Place Northwest. And it's can folks still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, sorry, I got a little feedback. It's a 4-unit building and we bought it in 2020. And we had to do some work to it to get it renovated, and then we rented it out. So it was sort of in the middle of the pandemic, and it was 4 separate 2-bedroom apartments. It was then damaged by an electrical fire last summer, I think June 29th. No one was hurt, thankfully. I put in a plug for checking your smoke alarms regularly. They're a good thing. Folks did have to move out of the building. The cause of the fire was determined to be just old electrical wiring in a roof space, like an enclosed ceiling area. So we want to continue to own this building. We want to renovate it again. And this time, we want to add 2 additional units along with sprinklers, new electrical systems. So something like that never happens to us again. And really almost everything will be new. There are a few key differences, and by virtue of adding 2 units, that we're going to need a special exception, sort of a BZA requirement. So this is my first rodeo going through that process or attending one of these. So I'll keep talking and then take questions. So our goal is to make this 3 3-bedroom units, and then also 3 2-bedroom units, for a total of 6 units. We have some rentals across the district, and we just get asked all the time about 3-bedroom apartments. So we want to make them 3 bedrooms to the extent we can. Again, it's currently a 4-unit apartment house or building, which is legally an apartment house in the district. We're going to keep the same footprint. That's our proposal. The same building height, same looking facade. And we're going to just essentially, I'll show you some pictures in a moment, but we're sort of in the back at the basement cellar level. It's above ground actually. And we're just converting, it's currently largely utility storage space. So our goal is to convert that space into these 2 additional units that will be similar to the floor plans above it. And I have some floor plans, so I'll throw them up on the screen in a sec. Again, 3 3-bedrooms, 3 2-bedrooms. This area is zoned RA1, which provides for multi-family buildings, just like this one currently is. There's like 10 other places like this on the block, some near identical, some look a little different. At the end of the block, there's one that's substantially more units, like it's got to be at least 10. So it's varied, but this block is multi-unit entirely. But again, by virtue of adding any units at all, we need a BZA special exception. And then those last 2 bullets, by going up in the number of units, we're required to have 1 off-street parking space. And we're also seeking relief from that parking requirement. I've written it in this last bullet on screen here. But in general, our tenants don't have cars, and the parking spot, I'll show you a picture, but it would literally cut in half the amount of green space we have in the backyard. And our tenants do use green space. They barbecue, they have pets, etc. And kids, yes, and it's a place kids run around to. Here's some pictures. Ours is the one with the red door. This dumpster is unrelated. This is for a neighbor. This is, again, we're between the 3rd and 4th Street on Delafield Place Northwest. The second picture on the lower right is looking east towards 3rd Street. I got some more, hold on. This is looking the other way, towards 4th Street. On the next block, I mean, it looks like a lot of Petworth. There's 1-family homes on the next block as you move west. And elsewhere in the area. This immediate vicinity is largely multi-unit on this block. These are pictures of the rears. This is what I was talking about. We would basically lose half of the rear if we put in a parking spot here. This is what I was talking about, how it's largely above ground. And so we think these are nicer than, I've lived in basement units, and I think this is nicer. This would be nicer than many. Let's see. Neighborhood outreach is something our architect told us to talk to you folks about. So the Office of Zoning actually has a process for this that we step through. You know, they're very specific about it. So Skylar took labels for all the property owners within 200 square feet down to the Office of Zoning. Those folks then issue letters to those property owners. Those letters notify folks about, you know, the relief we're requesting, which is again sort of the addition of 2 units and an exception from the parking requirement. Tell folks about the hearing date, and then provide, I believe, a URL where they can access sort of the document package, which includes project plans. We've talked to adjacent neighbors a lot. We have, on the one side, the guy's quite responsive and has sent a letter saying he supports us. On the other side, I've had a ton of conversations with that property owner and plans to meet him. We're just nailing down a date. So, you know, I've spoken to him like 3 times, sent him probably 3 or 4 text messages, and we're just in the process of nailing down a time to discuss it, but he seems generally aligned. And yeah, and we sent him a letter last week with the plan, so he would have a physical copy of them, and I'll show them to him in person too. And then BZA also requires that we put up one of those huge red signs that you see for just about anything in town, providing notice of our BZA hearing date, which is again, well, I don't know if I said it already, but it's May 24th. So I don't know what that is, about 6 weeks out, I guess. And now I'm going to step through the plan. So this is a landscape plan, as noted at the bottom. And again, we're going to keep the existing footprint. That's this gray area. We'd have staircases down for these lower level units, and the yard in the back, the grass area that we want to keep if we can. First floor, common area, bedroom. Excuse me, this is the what I guess I'd call the ground floor. So common area, bedroom, bedroom, bedroom. They're all somewhat similar looking floor plans. Next floor, these ones, our architect has suggested we make these just 2 bedrooms, partially because of lighting issues. So I think folks can probably see those, but they look generally similar. Oh, and I should note there's a sprinkler system. So we'll put in a sprinkler system this time around. All new electrical, all new, really everything except the facade and the building height. But we're trying to fully renovate. And then second level is very similar to the first level, but with the addition of a 3rd bedroom for one of these units that is essentially above the area where you come in the front door on the first floor. You know, on the second floor in that same spot, we can make a 3rd bedroom. So we'd like to. Let's see what else I got. All right, I aspired to under 10 minutes and I might have done it. So questions or comments?
So thank you for your presentation. I don't mind taking the lead here. One thing that we are in our neighborhood specifically worried about is trash. Do you know if you do you get city trash pickup, or are you hired through a 3rd-party company?
Once you have it comes up for us, so it's 4 units or higher, you get your own trash company, and so we do currently. And I'd add on top of trash, because it bothers me a lot too, because I end up going over there. And the other thing I'd add is rats. And it's part of the reason I don't want to add a parking spot for all these reasons. It's going to like cut the green space, and I think there'll be more trash, and I think it'll add to a rat problem that is up and down the block. It's not unique to our property.
Yeah, I just for note, I live around the corner, so I'm very familiar with the street. I walk by there pretty much every morning with my dog, so I'm very familiar. My question, if you guys could have heard me, and connection's being funny today, I think, with the wind, but are you going to make sure that with the increased units, you're also increasing the frequency of trash pickups since there'll be more people on the property?
I hadn't thought about it, but I can tell you that that I hate trash. And I will make sure that there's not excessive trash there. So I think what I may have to do, I think the zoning requirements may be that I have to change the nature of the trash pickup, but we are diligent about that. And I don't know the exact number of trash pickups that would be required, but we are currently diligent about that and would remain diligent about it.
Okay. I yield to any other questions from commissioners.
Commissioner Lucarelli, let's start with you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Potter and company for the presentation. Do you mind toggling back to the site plan real quick? I just had a question related to something one of my colleagues mentioned. And by the way, I am supportive of this project. I really appreciate your presentation. As someone who's actually worked in planning and zoning for almost the last decade, I've shepherded projects like these before boards and commissions. And so, you sounded like you had, been in the trenches doing the same. So it was a very good presentation. And I like the fact that you noted that, a lot of people that live in multifamily buildings, particularly in dense urban environments like our neighborhood, don't own cars. I live in a 10-unit walk up on Kennedy and 7th. Half of the folks that live in here don't own vehicles. And so I appreciated that statement. Some people need vehicles, but not everyone owns one, particularly in this neighborhood where there's good access to transit. But yeah, if you could just pull the site plan up real quick, because Commissioner Morenzik raised a good point. We're all familiar with the problems with vermin in this city. And I was wondering if there's area, have you considered like some sort of commercial style dumpster, something that, because these plastic trash cans that DPR gives us, they're not working. The animal can lift it up and or chew through it, as we all know. And so, if you look at cities, other major cities, I mean, when I think of, places like Barcelona, Mexico City, Paris, ad nauseum, the trash is localized in very large, heavy bins that no animal could ever open. And so I was wondering if there's room in this rear area, because I'm supportive of the parking reduction, by the way, but if there's room for something like that, or if that's something you consider, because, I do fear that, the more that we use these plastic cans, we're just perpetuating an issue. And so I didn't know if that's something that was studied, explored, or considered. Thank you.
Skylar, I appreciate the comment, Commissioner Lucarelli, and Skylar, my wife, and I are the folks who do most of the considering on this kind of thing. And we have considered it, and we're hoping to be able to do that. I worry that for the dumpster pickup, that often you probably notice, like a trash truck will have those forks and they pick it up and dump it behind them. And that may be my hang up in my ability to do that. But I do have a dedicated trash area, and forgive me, my employer switched off Zoom and now my Zoom skills are terrible. So I think that I'm sharing it with you, but it's this area right here that I'm highlighting. And I very much agree with you. So, I mean, we stay on it. And oddly, these trash cans aren't chewed up at all. So I can't speak to why that is, but I understand your concern, and we'll see if we can do dumpsters. And my only potential pitfall may be accessed by a trash truck.
No, I understand. I mean, because those things have tight turning movements, and if it doesn't comport with the geometry of the property, then it's a no-go. Another option is to just find a tenant that has an outdoor cat, because those seem to also do it. But
I
at
agree.
At any rate,
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming forward tonight and giving this great presentation. I look forward to supporting the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cornelius.
Just a quick question. Thank you for your presentation. It was really well done. And I'm also very familiar with Delafield Place, because one of my close friends resides on the 4th block of Delafield Place. Given the number of residents, have you considered maybe hiring a vendor, a pest control rodent vendor? I personally use one, and I've found that it's decreased, at least in my alley, a lot of the rat population.
Yes, I have a guy. He's not as formal as some folks. His name is Mustafa, and he's a heck of a vendor. And he goes by and he laments the neighborhood condition, frankly, like up and down that alleyway. And it's not just this alleyway, because I've walked the neighborhood to look at it. It seems like a bigger issue.
Oh, it's a huge issue. Call me the rat patrol woman on our commission.
But it irks you as a housing provider, because because you don't want that. You just don't want it. And so yeah, we do have a vendor, and we would continue to retain that person. Yes, that is something that it's imperfect. I mean, I welcome anybody else's experiences on that point, but you kind of keep going after it, and it's a little bit like whack-a-mole. You keep pursuing it, and you need to be diligent about it. And we consider ourselves people who are diligent about that and trash. And generally being involved. We manage these things. I should have said that. Like, we don't have like a management company. I mean, maybe one day we will. We also have jobs and young children, but for the moment, we have, we just field a lot of phone calls, and we're around a lot. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, man.
No, I appreciate that answer, and you're right. I don't think it's an exact science, and it's, if you have one person such as myself, it can't only be me, it can't only be you in that radius. Other people have to also consider something like that.
Commissioner Pinckney.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for the presentation. It was marvelous. I just have a question. Do you already know the families that you're going to be rented to?
Not entirely. So some folks stayed in the neighborhood when they were displaced. Like, we were very involved with that for months. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I'm sorry to interrupt you, man.
No, it's okay. Because I just want to know how you know that your proposed tenants won't have cars.
They, because I have, it varies, but because I have about 20 tenants, and in these kinds of, because nobody at this place has ever had a car. But you may be correct that in the future folks may have a vehicle. I understand that's a possibility. It is also true anecdotally that in my experience as a housing provider in the district, which I've been doing, as a side gig for, at least 10 years, very few, so maybe 20% of the tenants we've had have vehicles, just because of, I don't know what it is, Commissioner Pinckney, but that's been my experience, and I understand that my experience isn't dispositive on this issue.
Okay, so and the vehicle issue is an issue for me across the board, because there are people who don't work in the city. There are people who work, if the FBI ends up being in Virginia, they're gonna need their car. If there are quite a few federal buildings, federal locations that are gonna change, and people are gonna need their cars. So if you get someone and they have a car, or they may have little children but work a midnight shift and they need their car. Because I was looking at the beautiful pictures of the street. So are you telling me there's no street parking enough for a tenant that might have a car?
Oh, I misspoke if I gave that sense, ma'am. Like,
oh no, I'm just asking.
But there's ample. Yes, I understand, and I'm not always a model of clarity, so I appreciate that. But I would say, in my experience, there's a lot of street parking on this block. I'm not there day and night. Like, I moved to Ward 1 like a little while back. So I'm not saying I sleep there all the time or I'm around, but I'm in and out of there a lot. And like this picture, there's a lot of street parking there. Frankly, I can't remember what day this is. But I don't know, Commissioner Marinsek, perhaps you have experience if you're walking your dog there in the morning, for instance. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I was just about to chime in. There's more than adequate street parking pretty much at all times of the day. So I'm not concerned about only, and I think the regulation would require only one parking space, and that really wouldn't have an impact on the street anyway. So I'm comfortable with the zoning variance request.
Okay, well now that I understand, I'm comfortable with that also. So you're asking for that, you're making that request because you would like to have more yard space, and that's going to be more of a benefit to the people who will be living there. Is that correct?
I believe it has many benefits, including those you highlighted. yes.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm in support of it, and I know that street. It's a beautiful location. So good luck with that.
I appreciate it. And ma'am, I should be clear that it's a double, I'm here for a double whammy. It's the parking thing, plus they make you get a special exception if you're adding units, period. Yeah. So,
Right, yes.
yeah, yes. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I saw the adding of the units. It was very brilliant, nice concept. And you're also in that business, and you know a lot of people are looking for 3-bedroom apartments, and they're hard to find. So that's great. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Potter, and before we get to you, Mr. Mene, I've got a quick question for Mr. Potter. You may have said this before, and I apologize if I missed it, but just for our own knowledge, are any of these units going to be designated as low-income housing?
And I don't know, Commissioner Perotti, because I don't know how they define that term under the law, but it is true that we sometimes do Section 8 housing, and this was Section 8 before. So to the extent that, and I don't know what I'll do in the future, but that is something that we do at times. And so if that meets the definition of that, whatever the affordable housing, then yes. But I also can't speak definitively to whether or not it does. I'm sorry, I can't be more clear.
No, I appreciate the honest answer. Thank you. Mr. Mene.
Yes, thank you. I applaud you for keeping the green space. That's more important than parking. I was gonna ask, I know I was quite amazed that you're increasing the number of units and keeping 3 bedrooms. That's amazing as well. I was gonna ask about the utilities used in the building. Do you still use gas, appliances, or heating? And are you aware that there's funding available to do retrofitting and electrification? Yeah.
I find often that kind of funding is it's a lot of hoops. But what I can tell you is that I'm not going to put gas in this building. That is not my intent, because I don't believe the future is gas economically or environmentally. And the new electrical, they've just gotten really a whole lot better with the electric stuff. So we've got a guy, a civil engineer, who thinks we can do this with no gas. So that's my intent, although I'm certainly open to views to the contrary.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from the public? No. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Mr. Potter. We appreciate your presence. Commissioner Morensic, what happens next?
So I would make a motion that ANC 4D votes in favor of the variance requests as proposed by Mr. Potter and his wife. So any seconds?
And just to clarify, Mr. Morensic, are you suggesting that we vote on it tonight or at April's meeting?
I think that we can vote on it tonight. Is that correct? This is my first as well, so.
I wasn't sure if we needed to pass a resolution that would do it.
I could offer that my architect asked me to ask for a vote and to avoid coming back. And he seemed to think it was a possibility, but I will do what I'm told.
No objection on my end. Any objections from any of the commissioners? Okay,
No.
so do we have a second then?
Second it.
Are there any debates or questions or comments from any of the commissioners? Or are we prepared to vote on the motion? So just to clarify, Commissioner Morensic, the motion is to approve of the requests for the zoning variance, is that right?
That's correct.
But one note, Commissioner Perotti, is this is legally not a variance. This is a zoning exception. And so I just want the record clear, because the standard for a variance would be much more difficult.
So thank you very much. So just to clarify, once we're voting in favor of the zoning exception requested by Mr. Potter, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I have
Supported the
unready.
request made by the applicant.
I have unreadiness, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Pinckney.
Okay, just help me understand. What is it that we're trying to vote on? A zoning what? Variance?
Not a
I can
variance,
offer the
apparently.
detail I know, but if that would be helpful. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir.
No, that's okay. Do we actually have, Commissioner Mensik, I can't remember, a formal written statement? Is this in writing anywhere?
Actually, I'm not sure that if I have it in writing. That is a good question. I have it, his request in my email. But I'm not sure if I have an actual formal written statement, which might be, you're right, might be required of us.
I think Commissioner George?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that there's a specific form that is the ANC report that we have to fill out and vote on, and that becomes our like formal written recommendation. That said, Mr. Potter, that doesn't necessarily mean that you personally would have to come back.
Yeah.
I think this has been, a great opportunity to hear from you about the project, and then I'm not sure that we'll need necessarily further deliberation, but I think it would probably be that we would have to have that written report prepared and then vote on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the information. Sorry, my internet is being terrible this evening, so I'm trying to pull that up to see if I actually have it.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Pinckney.
Okay, may I, since we hadn't started a motion, I would like to move that we receive the form that's necessary for us to complete. And since we have heard the presentation and we're all in agreement that the request is reasonable, that we can, once we get everything in writing, as long as it appears exactly like it's been presented, I have no problem with us signing the document. But right now, I'm just a little unready because I don't really understand what I'm voting for.
Yeah. So to your point, Commissioner Pinckney, I think that's a good point. My suggestion would be that we postpone the vote until April so that we can all have a chance to actually read it and go through it. Mr. Potter, I don't think there's a need for you to come back. My sense is unless someone objects, that there's support for the exception. I don't think anyone has any major questions or issues with it. This is just a technical issue of the voting. So I don't think that you're welcome to attend next month's meeting, but I think Commissioner Mensik can just handle it for you.
And I also think that I mean, I am not your architect, so I don't know, but my sense is that the important thing is that the ANC's vote on supporting or opposing is in before your hearing date, which is in May. So my hope is that it wouldn't delay your process at all for us to vote on it at our next meeting.
All of that makes a ton of sense. And I'm a marginally careful person, so I'll be here next month too. But I appreciate the help. And if Commissioner Mensik, if there's something I can do to help write up a written form, I'm not sure whose purview that is, but I'm aware that you all do a ton of work that, and I'd be happy to help. So just let me know what I
Anybody
can
hear
do.
me?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. We appreciate you coming today. So it sounds like we're postponing this vote until April, but we appreciate you coming and answering our questions today. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks. Have a great night, folks. Bye.
Thank you. You too.
Potter.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Does that work for you, postponing till April? Is that okay, Stephen?
That's fine. Yeah, I had
Okay.
a copy of old variance and special exception request in front of me, and it basically says that we considered it before duly noticed meeting of the commission with a quorum present, and they voted. But I'm fine typing it up if that's what we want to do. That's fine with me.
And then we can do it properly and post it online for the public as well. So thank you.
That's fine with me. Yep, no problem.
Excellent. Okay. Next up, we have 3 more things to vote for tonight. Commissioner George, standing committees.
Yep. Hopefully this one can be fast. We discussed at our prior meeting that we were considering establishing a series of standing committees for ANC 4D. I listed those in the agenda, but the 4 committees are a public safety committee chaired by Commissioners Judson and Weigel, Transportation and Vision Zero committee chaired by Commissioners Lucarelli and Morensik, an environmental and public health committee chaired by Commissioners Corniotis and Weigel, and a public facilities committee, which would include library issues, chaired by Commissioners Pinckney and Judson. So the resolution that we drafted that is up in the agenda and that I will paste into the chat. Basically just acknowledges that we're establishing those standing committees and briefly describes the mission of each of them. I guess we can ask if folks have questions and then take a vote.
So first, I think it's you make the motion, and then is there a second?
I second.
Second, excellent. And then comments, questions, debates from the commissioners? All right, then sounds like we're ready to call the vote. All those in favor say aye as I call your name. Commissioner Pinckney.
You're on mute.
Aye.
Commissioner Judson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lucarelli.
Aye.
Commissioner Corniotis.
Aye.
Commissioner Morensic.
Aye.
Commissioner George.
Aye.
Commissioner Weigel.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Next up, we have a motion from, I think it's Commissioner Morensic. We're back to you, right?
Yep, I'll be real quick. This is a motion basically symbolic that's bringing the attention of DC voting rights and the atrocity that happened to us over this past week with the DC crime bill. This is a motion that basically condemns Congress's actions and calls on President Biden to support DC voting rights. And we wish he would veto the legislation as it comes across, of course. But so this is just a motion that I'd like to bring for the ANC to show our support for the ongoing cause of DC statehood and hands-off voting rights.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? Any comments from any of the commissioners? Are we ready to call the question? Commissioners, when I call your name, say aye or nay. Commissioner Pinckney.
Aye.
Commissioner Judson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lucarelli.
Aye.
Commissioner Corniotis.
Aye.
Commissioner Morensic.
Aye.
Commissioner George.
Aye.
Commissioner Weigel.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. The ayes have it and the motion carries. Last up, we have a motion from Commissioner Judson about a public library on Kennedy Street. Commissioner Judson.
Thank you. So Commissioner Pinckney and I collaborated on this resolution in support of a public library, funding for a public library to come to 5th and Kennedy Streets Northwest. Councilwoman Lewis George has advocated for this library and for funding in the next budget cycle to fund a library at this location. This library would not take away from any efforts to bring a library to Shepherd Park, but instead be a new addition. Currently, there are no libraries less than a mile from 5th and Kennedy Streets Northwest, and so would really fill a service gap for the area and be a positive sort of asset to the neighborhood, especially this particular intersection that has been plagued with quite a bit of gun violence for the past few decades. And so this is a resolution in support of funding to build a library at 5th and Kennedy Streets. And Commissioner Pinckney, please jump in with any additions to what I just shared.
I don't have any. You covered it.
All right, so we have the motion from Commissioner Judson. Is there a second?
I'm happy to
Second.
second.
Any points of debate, questions, comments from any of the commissioners?
Not a point of debate, but I will also just note that the resolution as drafted authorizes Commissioners Judson and Pinckney to speak for the commission on this issue. So I think if you do end up testifying at those hearings next month, you can be clear that you're speaking on behalf of all of us.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Any other comments from any of the commissioners? Are we ready for the question then? Commissioners, when I call your name, say aye or nay. Commissioner Pinckney.
Aye, aye, aye.
Commissioner Judson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lucarelli,
Aye.
Commissioner Corniotis,
Aye.
Commissioner Morensic,
Get that library. Aye.
Commissioner George.
Aye.
Commissioner Weigel,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. That concludes the business of the evening. I propose that we adjourn until April 15th. Can I have a second?
Second.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for your
Great
patience.
evening.
Aye.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you again.